Good to see everyone here this morning. Thanks for coming out. My name is Gregan Dunn, Director of Publishing at Hothead Games. I've been with Hothead for 12 of its 13 years. Through my time at Hothead, I've given hundreds of game pitches for my company, and now as head of publishing, I see hundreds of game pitches from developers. And very few developers really nail their pitches, so I thought it'd be great if I could give back and offer some tips and hopefully improve the way developers pitch their games. So Hothead's been around for 13 years. We focused exclusively on mobile for 10. We have our own internal development, and we've self-published all of our mobile games over the 10 years that we've been in the mobile space. In the last almost a year, we've opened up to third-party games, so we're looking to use our publishing expertise for third-party games. And we offer all kinds of areas of expertise. We've been through the trenches and through the wars, and we know what it takes to make a successful game, and we know what it takes to publish a successful game. And we have the skill sets to help on both sides. We've created a bunch of great games over the years. These are some of our biggest hits. So back in 2011-ish, we started the Big Win Sports franchise, which did really well for us. We then created the Kill Shot franchise, which did exceptionally well for us. And more recently, we launched an RPG third-person shooter called Hero Hunters. Here's our crew. We're about 150 people total. This was the day where we got some new Hothead hats and we hit the rooftop of our studio. This is beautiful Vancouver with the North Shore Vancouver Mountains. We also have a small studio in Halifax that does some development for us. My presentation has three components to it. The meat of it is in the middle component. And as we go through this presentation, you can keep an eye on the progress bar at the bottom so you can see where we're at in the presentation and how much further we have to go. I think one of the key things when you're pitching your game is to consider it like you're on the show Dragon's Den or here in the States Shark Tank. If you've not watched this show and if you actually do regularly pitch your game, I highly recommend you watch a couple hours of it. Not only is it entertaining, but it's also a really good how-to and how not to pitch your game to an audience that you're expecting to invest their time and invest their money into your particular project. To get off on the right start, there's certain tools you need to have at your disposal to give a good pitch. I've seen all kinds of bad devices and really bad setups for pitches, and I think it's great to have the right tools to get you set off straight. One common mistake I see a lot is people demo their games on a small device and they're trying to demo over your shoulder, and it's really not a great experience from a publisher's perspective to see your game as you're playing it on a small device. So do what you can to get your game on the largest screen that you have available to you, whether that's no matter what the environment is you're presenting in. The best setup that I've found over the years for pitching my game to people is actually hooking up my iPhone to a MacBook, and then you can mirror the display of your iPhone on your MacBook using QuickTime. And this is great because it's extremely versatile. You can use this setup in a conference showroom floor. You can use it in a conference room setting. It allows you to present to one or more people with a great size screen and really good audio on your MacBook. And it also alleviates the problem of people looking over your shoulder when you're playing on a mobile device. You can turn that MacBook and point it right at your audience, and they can really see the fidelity of your game and the beauty of your game. I can't actually hear you, so ask me the question afterwards, and I'll do a better job of hearing what you're saying. And maybe what I'm about to say next answers your question. I think this setup works on obviously Apple setup. There's obviously options on Windows and Android. I've not looked into them, but I'm sure they exist. And also, to remain flexible, have a couple other tools that you can use on the fly. So HDMI cable with a dongle that you can hook up to your phone, and you can get that HDMI into a projector or a TV. Just have it in your back pocket, so if you walk into a meeting room or a hotel room and there's a TV, you can plug it right in and get going. Also preparing for different lengths of pitch. So when you're at a trade show, you're going to have different pitch lengths, and you're going to have a preset meeting. Sorry, let me take a step back here. So one of the first things you should do when you start a meeting is just sort of ask how long you have for that meeting. Even if it's a predefined half-hour long meeting, someone might have to leave the meeting early, or you might not have as much time as you expected. So get the audience that you're with to confirm how much time you have so that you can adjust your pitch accordingly and prioritize the elements in your pitch for the audience. So Say you have an hour-long meeting with a publisher and there's 5 people in the room and the finance guy has to leave in the first 15 minutes, well then make sure that you put the finance part of your presentation at the forefront of your presentation so they get what they need out of the presentation. And one real big area I feel a lot of developers fall short is allowing for a 50-50 a rule. So developer, pitch for half of the presentation and then spend half of the time you have available asking questions and having a dialogue with the audience so that you're getting a better sense of what their reaction is to the game. And you can also ask questions of the publisher to figure out if it's a right fit or not. Be prepared for any given type of environment. At any trade show, you can run into a pitch in an elevator where you've only got 30 seconds to get a pitch across. Or you might be on a loud show floor or in a quiet conference room setting or in a bar. So be prepared for all those different environments. All right, now to the middle section of the presentation. What are the meat and potatoes of a pitch? What are the key elements that you need in any given pitch to sort of cover your bases? Obviously, you can deviate from what I'm presenting here today, but if you have these core elements in your presentation, they'll really help show to your audience that you're dialed in and you know what you're doing with your game. One of the key areas I find that developers really fall short on is really having a concise description of their game. It's imperative you have the ability to describe your game in 10 words or less. I think it goes a long way to getting people hooked and excited and quickly understanding your game as quickly as possible. One of the best examples of a concise statement of a game that's worked for me in my career was when Hothead made the game Death Bank. It was a game we made for Xbox Live Arcade and PlayStation Network like 10 years ago. Death Bank gets his powers from his purple thong of justice, which you can see on the screen there. But we pitched that as Monkey Island adventure and humor combined with Diablo combat and RPG upgrade systems. And it really resonated. So if you Google Death Bank on Google right now, every single person that covered our game referenced the key talking points that we had about our game. And it immediately conveyed exactly what the game was we were creating. So a quick description like this isn't just good for creating a pitch, but it's also good to get your development team on board. So if you have a quick, concise description of your game that everyone on your team repeats, you know that your team is working towards the same game. So this is something, actually a lot of what I'm presenting here today is what you should be doing at the very beginning of a game development so that everyone on the game team is also working towards the same goal. A scripted demo is awesome. Whenever I prep to give a pitch at a conference, I work with my dev team to determine what the best levels are, what the best looking upgrades are. I go over the core loop with them, and then I actually work with them so that they create a debug function for me that allows me to reset the game progress so that I go right back to the same position in the game and I can redo that demo over and over and over again. So the benefit to that is you get used to showing off the best parts of your game. You don't get distracted by areas of the game that you might not want to show off if you're doing it off the cuff. And it just shows that you're really dialed in and polished. KPIs are exceptionally important in the industry. It's great to show the KPIs of your game. If your game isn't out yet, show that you've done the research and present KPIs for competitive games. And that shows your audience that you have the target in mind. You know what it takes to be successful in the particular space you're competing in, and it gives you targets that you can hold yourselves accountable to and that the publisher can hold yourself accountable to. The key metrics that we would be looking for are obviously retention, ARPU, and cost per install. And obviously those require a fair number of users. So on a smaller sample set of users, we would look at ARPDAU, time played, as well as the session count. So one of the key metrics we look for at Hothead is actually day 0 time played. So if you have that type of information, present that to your audience. And it's so crucial that the developers we work with understand data. So really work on that as a part of your presentation to your publishers. And also it's really important to add in actual screenshots of the dashboards that you're using. Anyone can type in the metrics that their game is doing, but you're not really sure how valid they are, and you're not sure what segment they are. So if you show screenshots of the actual analytics platform you're using, it'll help understand the validity and also the cohort of the data that you're presenting. Another cool portion of a game pitch should be something that tells the audience why your game is different and why users are going to want to play your game. For me, I'm a big fan of the Attribution Chart. You could do a gap analysis or provide some other market research, but just provide something that shows how your game's different and why people are going to want to move from another game to play this game. So in Attribution Chart, you basically pick 4 or 5 of the competitive games in the space, and you pick a bunch of features within those games that you feel are important to be successful. And then for each feature, you rank how each game performs in each area. And as you layer on multiple games, you eventually identify the key areas where you can improve upon the competition and show that you're better and different from the competition. And the key part for this is, why do you exist? Why does this game exist? Why do people want to play your game over the games that are already on the market? There's a lot of Me Too games on the market right now. There's a lot of Me Too games being made, and I think it's really important for us to find ways to be different and special. Providing an overview of the team that's working on the game. So you're the business guy, you're presenting to an audience. You've got a team back at your office that's making the game, and they're really important, and it's really important that your audience knows who they are. So providing a high-level overview of the key people involved in the project and the size of the game team helps put in perspective what your team can actually pull off and deliver on. Listing teams' accomplishments and their location are also really good points on buttoning up this particular part of your presentation. I always find myself having to ask where you are in the development cycle. I think it's really great if you could present a timeline of what you've accomplished and where you're at in the timeline of a game. This is an example mock-up of a timeline of a particular game. It shows the key deliverables, the features, the focus of the launches you're working on, and it shows the team size. So it gives the audience a sense of where you're at in production, how much further you have to go, what kind of manpower it's going to take to deliver it, and really puts the project in perspective and lets the audience know where you're at in the grand scheme of your project. Also clearly spelling out what you need from your audience. So what is it you're looking for? Why are you pitching your game to me? What area does your studio lack and need to be successful? So these are the skills that Hothead can offer. Just highlight, do you need monetization help? Do you need game design help? What areas do you feel that the publisher needs to bring to the table to make your game successful? So highlight that in your presentation. And somewhat related to that is defining what your level of success is for your game. So, for example, I see a bunch of pitches, and I'm wearing Hothead publisher hat, and I want to make millions of dollars a year on a given game, so I'm always grading games with that in mind, unless someone tells me differently. So I had one person present their game to me once, and it was cute. And it was a game based on a specific dog breed, and it was a platformer, and I was like, oh man, I'm going to break this person's heart telling them it's not going to be financially viable and she shouldn't spend her time on it. And I just asked her, well, what's your level of success? What do you want to achieve with this game? And she's like, I want to make $30,000, and I want to donate that money to the charity that supports this dog breed, and that's what my definition of success is. So for me, that was a turning point in the conversation I was having with her. I'm like, yeah, you could make 30 grand with this game. That's totally achievable, go for it, but I can't help you out. That's not something that I can help you do. So defining what your level of success really sets the tone for the conversation and helps to determine the match. At Hothead and a lot of publishers, we're looking for games that are already out in the market, that are already attaining a certain level of success. So defining where you are and where you want to be with working with a publisher will also help set the tone in terms of what, if the publisher can actually deliver on what your expectations are. All right, post-pitch. Once you finish your pitch, what do you do? What do you do once you finish the game demo and presented all the information? What should you do next? Be prepared to ask a lot of good questions. Find out if the game that you're working on meets their expectations, meets their portfolio. Find out about what their approval process is for finding the next game. Like, how long does it take, and what are the steps in that process? Who's involved in evaluating the game and determining if the two companies are going to work together? So asking those kinds of questions go a long way to helping define the next steps and how you work with a publisher. Take feedback graciously. I do my best not to be Kevin O'Leary when I'm giving my feedback to people, but I think it's really important that I give my feedback as difficult as it is sometimes. I think it's there's so mI great games to be made, and if I find a game isn't the right, if I find a game that I really think is a waste of time, it's a bit harsh to say, but I will give that feedback, and I will present the challenges to the person and say that it's probably not a good chance. I think you should all look for that feedback and take it gracefully. And if you see common themes through all the feedback you're getting from publishers, and I can't stress that you should always force publishers to give you that feedback when you're talking to them. If you see a common theme within the feedback, react to it and change. Change the game you're making, change the features you're putting into it, address the feedback as soon as you can. Always be closing. So post-meeting, this is a scene from a great movie, Glengarry Glen Ross. It's a great movie about a bunch of sales guys. If you've not seen it, I highly recommend it. It's a classic. So always try and close the deal after the fact. So you get back and you be polite, but be persistent in following up with the publishers or the other people you're presenting your pitch to and are looking to close deals with. We're all busy. We all get a lot of emails. Just keep on top of people. Follow up with regular emails. But I think the key thing for me is encourage people to say no to you. No, this relationship's not going to go work out. The longer the time you spend to getting a definitive answer is more time you spend on that particular party, that particular relationship. So try and get a no out of people. Obviously you want a yes, but just say, hey, if this isn't going to work out, let me know. I totally get it. But look for that closure as quickly as you can. So as a summary here, the 12 items, I'm not going to go over, but these are I'm not going to read them out for you. It's not overly complicated. It's a lot of work that you should do before you start making a game, and it'll help with making the game as well as pitching it.
Thanks, Gregan. So on KPIs, what's a good basis in terms of sample size to give you trust in terms of installs or DAUs?
The rule of thumb for me on retention is around 7,000 users. So anywhere from 5 to 10,000 users, I'll get a decent level of confidence around the retention. ARPU and ARPDAU and all those other ones require tens of thousands of users to get any sense of confidence around them. So for games that don't have a large number of users, I will look at retention real closely, and I'll look at time played very closely, because those are sets of data, KPIs that don't require large sample sizes to be fairly valid, fairly statistically significant. It's always nice to see great games, the games that have great ARPU or great ARPDAU, but you got to take it with a grain of salt. And if I see no monetization on a small number of users, I won't be too worried, because it takes, like I said, tens of thousands of users to get any confidence around those numbers. You're always looking for those, the spenders, and there's not very many spenders, so you just got to keep acquiring users and spending users to get to the sample size you need to see if it's going to work out. And that's something that Hothead would do to help out. If you've got a great game, it's retaining users, we would spend some money on that game to get the volume of users we would need to make a more firm decision on working with the developer.
Okay, I'm going to just go ahead and fire one off to you. So when a developer is looking for budget, looking for funding for a game, do you have any recommendations or suggestions for how to approach that potentially sensitive topic?
I don't think it's a sensitive topic. I've not personally tried to acquire funding in a long time, so I'm not quite sure all the avenues for the developers out there. Publishers are reluctant to do it in the mobile space these days. I'm actually funding a game right now. So Hothead does do that from time to time when there's a real good quality game in the works. Government organizations are really good for funding. I've actually raised a lot of money from the Canadian government to help fund Hothead's games when we first started out back in the day 13 years ago. I'd highly recommend talking to your local governments. It's not my area of expertise to really give good advice in that area, yeah.
Gotcha.
Publishers can do it. We have done it. We will do it again in the future, but I know it's tough. But, yeah.
I assume in a publishing relationship there's some kind of revenue sharing or percentages distribution. You don't have to go into details, but what's the accessibility or the openness, transparency to reviewing investments and records and accounting and that kind of stuff to determine percentage allocations for revenue sharing? Do you have some parameters for that?
In terms of the developer
developer access to the investment that the publisher's making, so they
Oh, well,
both
so,
have access
yeah.
to the activity and what things look like from a revenue sharing standpoint?
We tend to give access to the developers to the necessary dashboards. So if we'll give you access to the Apple dashboard, the Google dashboard, any advertising platform will give you access to that. So you'll be able to see day to day what the total revenue is for the project, and you'll be able to do the math yourself in terms of what we would owe you. Your publishing partner should be able to offer that to you without any problems. And then it's also the marketing spend is a big part of that, right? So you typically deduct the marketing spend from any revenues before you do a rev share. So we would provide reports that we would create, but we would definitely supply invoices and if the developer pushed for it. But we also provide dashboards that show the daily spend, where it's spent, what the CPI is per user. All that information is available to the developers we work with on a day-to-day basis.
Okay, I think that'll then wrap up this talk. Thank you so much, Gregan.
Thanks, guys.